Hey guys, Novus here, and welcome back to From the Depths. So, I know some people are pretty interested in the guns, and sort of how they go together and so forth. So, I did just design another gun. This was meant to be for the big battleship. I haven't been going through all the build for that so far, because I knew ahead of time it was going to need not just a big build in the first place, but because I was learning a lot of new concepts and so forth, it was going to take a lot of time. And as such, I sort of felt it may be more effective if I were to sort of learn and design it in my own time, kind of a dealio. Slowly get through it and figure out what I'm doing and make sure I'm doing it right, and then sort of go over the build afterwards. As a result, yeah, kind of worked on a new gun last night and thought I might bring it up and show off how it was built, what it do, and how to make one of your own. That's wrong. I changed that last night. Hang on. Damn it. Sorry, one sec. Something's definitely not right here. No, that's the changed one. Okay, alright, okay. I'm the confused, because I swear I changed the barrels before I changed the ammo, but just one thing real quick, I'm going to lengthen out these barrels and then save it up. So these were slightly longer. Oh yeah, another thing. Happened last night. So I've been doing a lot of looking around, trying to learn new things and so forth, and I thought, you know what? Normally I wouldn't do this because I try and sort of figure things out for myself and so forth, but it's probably a responsible move for me to kind of go and have a look around on YouTube and other places and so forth and try and find out how other people are sort of doing things and so forth. Maybe learn a little more about it. So when I did so, I noticed everyone who is doing anything on YouTube is apparently painting all their vehicles black and red. Now, I had been doing that since the get-go, I mean, like, since I first started playing. So it was just kind of like that, but it turns out, yeah, everyone else is kind of using the same colors, so I thought, you know what, might go with something different. So, just quickly fiddled a little bit with the colors last night. Still going to use the white for the inside. It is going to make it harder to tell if the armor's getting peeled away at to a degree, because this isn't that much of a darker color now, but I've got sort of a nice solid grey going on. The red pinstripes and so forth, and yeah, I don't know. I think it looks alright. But you guys let me know what you think, if you like the new fleet colors or if you dislike them. At the same time, I might, once I'm done with the gun, quickly show off the current version of the new Battleship. It has changed tremendously since last time. So, this is the size of the guns now. 156 meters per second isn't too bad for a Cram shell. Now, there's another thing that was supposed to have been done. It looks like it kind of got skipped over being saved as well, so I may have stopped that up. But these are all meant to be different guns entirely. Oh god. Okay, this is wrong. Okay, alright. I know how it's wrong now, so that's fine. I know which progress did get lost. So we'll get inside the gun in just a moment. As I am going to have to quickly change something anyway. This is something that didn't get saved last night, and kind of sideways now. That's not meant to be 1400. These are meant to be 1600 gauge, so we need a bit of a change. So what happened was I was meant to, and I'm going to have to take away the mirroring, have replaced these. And it is just a simple case of there are gauge increases at the bottom. You should be able to see it down there. It's an incredibly basic, straightforward setup. It looks a little more confusing than it is. The top part is more of a pain than anything. It's just sort of figuring out how to place 4 cannons next to each other really neat and tidy and such for good grouping. All the barrels are exactly the same length this time, although there seems to be a difference in the number of... Please headset. So occasionally my headset tries to shut itself down, thinking that it's just not in use, I guess. Yeah, there seems to be an inconsistency in the number of boxes attached to these. And on top of that, last night... Okay, see, this is different, because last night at one point I was looking at these again, and I found that there were 2 less ammo boxes on this barrel specifically, I believe it was. So I don't know how that happened. It's just weird. I hope it's not anything to do with this. Hang on. But yeah, I've noticed inconsistencies. They're not all equal. They should be. I might have to go through. I may have missed a box here and there somehow. But yeah. I was over, didn't. Yeah, I was kind of looking at it last night and I was like, hang on, that's a problem. So yeah, I'm just gonna rip these out, chuck these in, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna peel away the armor really quickly, and then maybe shrink it down and quickly give you guys an idea of exactly how I set it up. But it's fairly straightforward. I could pretty much demonstrate on a single layer, really. But first step when you're going to make a gun, there's 1 or 2 ways I've found to approach it. You either make a vehicle for a gun or a gun for a vehicle sort of a situation. So either you have an idea of, okay, this is how much firepower I'm going to need. So I'm having trouble punching through armor that's like this thick that has, okay, so we'll go here real quick. So we go to metal beams and we've got armor 15 and 2100 health. I also now know how the armor works better. I don't know how I ended up getting that backwards. But apparently I did. So yeah, working with slightly different values now. So if we're to do that, and then hang on, then put another steel beam behind that, what would happen is that beam would now have 30 armor and 2100 health. The beam behind it would have, well, it actually had the same because yeah, they're on either end. But yeah, so the bleed through would essentially allow each of these to have 30 armor. At the same time, they'd have 2100 health each. Now, if I was to then take, but at the same time, this wasn't how this gun worked out, and that's why it's gotten a bit of a change. It was actually working slightly differently, so I've got to double check and make certain this is how this works. I'm pretty sure it is. But I may have either mathed wrong, or Cram cannons might work differently to how I thought. Like, their stats might not be reliable. Yeah, so you got 30 armor, 2100 health. Then you put the wooden beam on the back, you'll get 80% of that, which is, you know, like 2 armor, to bleed through to this one. So at this point it has 32 armor. So what you do is you might go, okay, I need to break through that layer of hull. And that is, it's just too tough for my current guns, I need a new gun. Okay, so if you want to punch through completely, then you're going to want to do the math of figuring out the armor value of the outermost block, which is 32, and then find out the health value of the block. So, you know, we've got the metal beam for 2100, so that would give us 2100, 4200, then we go to the wooden beam. And finally, the wooden beam would have another 1080. Now, it would have much less armor, but you only need enough armor piercing value, as far as I'm aware, to get through the highest armor value block of them all. You don't lose armor piercing value as you go in. As far as I'm aware, you sort of instead just inflict your damage until the block breaks or the shell breaks. Because it runs out of damage, sort of a situation. Now, yes, so you've then got another 1080 to get through. So, doing the math, we've got, what, 4200, 5200, and 80. So that means we need a gun that's capable of doing 5280 kinetic damage with an armor piercing value of at least 32. to be able to break through that hull. At which point now you have your values. So then you can start sort of slapping together a gun that has those values. And that's just like sort of an example. On the other hand, you might be working with explosives and so forth. They interact completely differently, so you might need a calculator to figure out exactly how much damage you need to be doing to break through that hull. But yeah, that's sort of one way to approach it. Is if you have a very specific thing that needs doing. You've got a problem, you've got an enemy that it's being a real pain in the butt, and you're just like, no, I need to break this thing. That's sort of how you'd approach that from what I found. Then you've got the other approach, which is I've got this vehicle that's sitting here that has a space of, let's say we've got 9 by 9 sort of a space. So we could have 4 blocks out on each side is what that would mean. And then what you would have to do is sort of figure out, okay, lay those down like so, and start figuring out how you would want to set that up so that it's fairly cylindrical. So you want it to be circular. You want it to be a nice cylinder that's going to turn really easily in your ship. So to do that, I find doing things like this can kind of help. And then what you can do is you put a beam there and a beam there, and then beam slope diagonal. And that's like, that would end up being a fairly cylindrical sort of a setup. Those beams can stay. That is what's happened with this gun. That is pretty much precisely how this gun is set up, because it comes out 4 meters in each direction. So yeah, that's the build that's going on here. And you can see those beams, like the tall beams here, are actually these heavy these heavy armor beams here. Now what's happening with that? Now that I know the bleed through effect is a thing, any block that's touching that block is going to get a bleed through. So that means for each of these beams that I put in, they give 40 armor bleed through to this beam, to this beam, to this beam, to this beam. Which means all the way around, each of these armor plates from top to bottom should have a bonus of 40 armor. So that means they should have 45 armor. Now, as far as I'm aware, it's actually slightly different when it comes to sloped blocks. I believe they actually get a slightly lower value of bleed through. But regardless, we have basically boosted these to like the maximum armor value you can kind of have for a 2-block thick armor setup. And as such, this should be damn near impenetrable on the sides. Top could be a bit of a pain. However, I have got it set up so that all but 3 of the blocks on the top will also be getting a bleed through effect. So the way that that happens is kind of just the way the blocks sort of go in. Hang on, if I do this, so yeah, start putting the 4 meters back in. So that one would connect up there. This one would get the bleed through here. This one would get the bleed through here, and this one would get the bleed through here. But the other 2 here, well, sorry, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, and 3 here, would not. So those are the only technical weak points on that sort of setup. At the same time, I've got heavy armor on the bottom of this, sort of trying to bleed through and yeah, help with the top, as well as kind of just form like a nice armor plate over the top here, so that any of those beams that are kind of a little bit of a weak point aren't going to get hit and detonate the whole gun, as that can be a bit of a pain. So yeah, looking over all that, that's sort of how you want to, I guess, start out looking at your guns. First of all, try and find good points. This is something I'm going to be mucking around with a lot more now. Good points to be able to try and, I guess, not necessarily abuse, but make good use of those bleed through effects. Where you can kind of have situations where you might even have one single block there, and what's happening is you're actually kind of branching blocks off in different directions in your vehicle. So you've got like a 4-way section or something like that, anywhere sort of just along the sides of your vehicle where it kind of branches off in different directions. Using a heavy armor beam for that T intersection would mean that it's bleeding through in each of those directions. The more faces on it you've got covered, the better. So I'm kind of looking at mucking around with that to some degree, and basically creating sort of points in some of my vehicles where it does branch off in different directions for floors and so forth, as sort of just a heavy armor beam that bleeds through to all the surrounding armor and kind of just buffs its armor values up a bunch. So I would suggest taking that into account to some degree, because I've found some inconsistent results in regards to how damage works. It seems like if something hits the turret, so the top here, and I have seen people mention this, it can kind of, and I even had a theory on this, I kind of stumbled on this while doing the last build. It kind of seems like it won't interact with the rest of the vehicle, it'll only interact with one entity at a time. So let's say a Cram shell hits on the top of here. What will happen is there'll be a big explosive radius around that. The hull would be untouched, so the explosion damage wouldn't affect it, but would pass clean through it and interact with anything below the hull that's attached specifically to the turret, because it's only interacting with that entity. But I found mixed results, because when I then decided to armor up the turrets themselves by putting a layer of armor that sits over the turrets, and I mean like a literal sort of, you know, like armor that reaches out, may as well do it that way, I guess. But yeah, just sort of reached out over the top and kind of boxed it in. Oops. Yeah, that kind of situation. It hit, and basically what I noticed, let me just quickly extend this over. This is way bigger than what I'm talking about for boxing it in. But basically what I had going on was something like this. And so the guns could still rotate and lift up. You'll see it in a minute with the main battleship. But basically if a shell hit here, I was noticing it to detonate that section of wall and then do damage to the turret behind it. So I'm not 100% how that works. I have a feeling if it hits a turret, it'll only interact with the turret. If it's a vehicle, it'll interact with the vehicle and any sub-vehicles attached to it, i.e. or sorry, sub-entities attached to it, i.e. the turret. So I have a feeling damage to the ship goes both ways, damage to the turret goes one way. But I'm not 100% on this. This is just my theory from what I've observed so far. Okay, so ripping this away real quick, we'll actually get into that gun. So, essentially, this is the space we had to work with. Don't really need that there anymore, actually, to be honest. Okay, so we'll go to this, and we will pull away that arm. Now, what we got going on at the top here is, so the leftmost arm reaches up to the top. Now it stays up on the top side of the deck. One of them goes under. That would be this one here. Now the reason for that is that I can be moving these like this arm forward without it having to meet up. It's a real pain in the butt because you can't direct it in any way, shape or form. It'll try and connect with everything around it. You gotta do a bit of a jigsaw. So yeah, this one stays above. Three of them do go, yeah, one block up from where they start. The other one actually connects underneath the gun. And so it's actually using up 2 blocks underneath that could otherwise be used for more armor. So I've had to cut down the heavy armor beams there. It's a bit ripped, but yeah, it was kind of the only way I could get it neatly set up this way without taking up a large amount of space. I mean, you can always set this sort of stuff up, but it's either you'll have to make it taller or you'll have to make it wider. Going underneath is actually a real pain in the butt because you can't just go, like say from this front one, we can't go right or left now. So if we do, we'll connect up with that one, but we'll also connect up with the undersides of those ones. We'll also connect up to the undersides of those ones. It's, yeah, it takes a bunch of mucking around. This one had to be spaced way out, and I really dislike this part now. But it was just kind of how it sort of had to be done. I mean, I could rip these ones out and take this beam and cut it down a little bit by trying to run it underneath, but I'd still have to branch out one and then along, so it would use the same number. It would just be another block lower. So yeah, there's more connectors on this one than I prefer. But other than that, yeah, this arm here, yeah, you can kind of see how each of them sort of branch out. It's pretty straightforward. Now we got the bottom. So there is a different number of gauge increases down here by the looks of it. Wait, what? Hang on, let me double check this. No, that's correct. No, that's correct. That is correct. Okay, alright, never mind. My bad. Okay, so yeah, here we've got, these are the gauge increases we just put in. These were just 4 metal beams where I just kind of didn't have anything I could connect up really sort of dealio other than gauge increases, so I left them out until I knew that those are what I wanted to go with. But at this stage they should end up being 1600 mils. They've gone up to 1673. It's not really necessary. I'm taking them down to 1600. Yeah. So, the gun itself currently has a bunch of fragmentation pellets in it. Now, it was set up differently. What I had going on was 40 armor penetration, and I believe it was 5,500 kinetic damage. And so what would happen was, my hopes were it was doing enough damage to straight up bust through a heavy armor beam, if it needed to. But more importantly, it had enough damage and enough armor penetration that if you had, say, 2 layers of steel and then the layer of wood, and you had the 32 armor, this was well over that. But on top of that, if you had 3 beams of steel, I believe it was just a bit over 40, but it was about 40 armor pen. Yeah, it was just enough to be able to get through 3 beams of steel. Now, I then took it up against ships that had 2 layers of steel, and it failed to punch through. So I've ended up changing the gun. I don't know 100% as to how it works with Cram cannons. It might work differently somehow, and there might be something I'm overlooking. But yeah, when I tested it last night, I had, I believe it was this beam, and this outer beam here were all hardener pellets. And so yeah, it had enough damage that it should have been able to get through 3 layers of steel and enough armor penetration, and yet it was detonating on just like the outermost layer half the time of 2 layers of steel. That was with fuses set up for 3 meter detonation, so it would punch through 3 meters and then detonate. The idea behind that, of course, you know, like get through the outer layer of hull and then just flood the inside chamber with explosion. I probably should have said it a little bit higher, but even once I took that off, I found that it was just detonating on the hull. So I'm gonna have to look at that more and sort of figure out what I'm doing. As yeah, it was kind of meant to be a Battleship Buster type situation where I could get through multiple layers of really heavy armor, get inside a hull and detonate. But yeah, it's just not quite doing that. So instead, changed it over, brought the explosion damage way up by adding in the extra explosive pellets. I don't want explosive pellets on the outside, so I considered maybe even just putting a beam there, but I was like, you know what, no, that's a loss of stats. And whilst it would lower the, I believe it lowers the actual explosive damage to start adding on hardener pellets, on the other hand, fragmentation pellets means if this gets lasered down, especially with the sheer gauge that these end up getting to, they got a solid number of fragments in them. Now, from what I remember looking at it, it was 60. When the fragment count exceeds 60, the damage of each fragment will increase rather than the number of fragments increasing. So what would happen is, as far as I'm aware, it would just spawn enough pellets to hit in a 360-degree area, like a perfect cloud of shrapnel, essentially. Which means as soon as we get up above 60, these fragments have started increasing and increasing in damage. We've got maximum area of damage. Now, when they fire, from what I remember, we still end up with like 140 or something. So it's still pretty good. That's like with each subsequent round. The first round is always more damaging. So yeah, that's the idea behind that. Is if lambs end up setting off our, like they detonate our shell, what that'll do is it'll spray shrapnel at them and hopefully try and break their lasers from a distance. And yeah, just sort of a backup thing of that way the shells aren't a complete waste, because otherwise yeah, that could have just been beams, but it just wouldn't have had any damage and done anything. The reason I went with those over high explosives is high explosives health loss from 1 meter of heat penetration is 100%. Like, basically, they're high explosive. So, you know, they'll go boom. Fragmentation pellets, on the other hand, don't seem to have that downside. So, they're resistant to heat, which would be nice. It means that, you know, if an explosion simply reaches it, the high explosives would just go off, essentially, as far as I'm aware. Whereas if the radius of an explosion reaches this, it damages it until it blows it up. So with 100 health, 3 armor, I mean, it's not great, but should not go up too easily, especially with the fact that it's layered in armor. So, although this is the outer edge, so if something punches clean through the side and hits it, could still go up. Alright, so all that I've done for it's a pretty standard setup for the Cram connectors. We've got them coming down each side, like so. Now, no, that's not how I set that up. So what I've got going on, because I remember this being different now. Hang on. Something's wrong here. Something's very wrong here. Oh no, wait, it's because I'm looking at it so high up. Okay, yep. Yep. And it was... Yeah, okay, alright. I just double checked that for a second there. Okay. So what was happening was, once it gets down from the roof, it would reach here, then it reaches out a block, and then branches up like so. And what's going on is we've then got our autoloaders crammed in, branching off left and right. The second block out from that, so I believe these actually went up and down too. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Hang on. Let me double check the spacing. So we've got one space and then that. No. Hang on, something's... I'm so confused by my own gun right now. Okay, let me double check this. Hang on, have I miscounted? Is this a 5 block? It is too, yeah, that's right. It goes out 4 blocks and then armor. Okay, yep. That's what I... Okay, alright. Sorry, my bad. Of course, because it's got the double beams. So instead of having a single diagonal slope cut, it's got a second one here. So I've actually... Yeah, that's slightly smaller than the actual build. My bad. But that is how far out each arm will reach. And so basically what's happening is... The gun reaches down to here, branches up, we've got gauge increases behind it. Then it reaches out another block here. Then we've got on the ends of these autoloaders. Which way? There we are. And then here we've got more. And on the outer edge. Wait. So if that one's there, this one would have to be here. So that's actually the opposite way, isn't it? Yeah. So put that one. I believe these should be reversible to some degree though. Okay, alright. So the idea behind that is, unfortunately there is a layer of ammo that like, we can't really get the double up type situation, but the reason for that, because you can connect 2 3-way autoloaders up to a single ammo box, and you can actually have multiple. Sort of how you're surrounded kind of dictates that. So if we were to quickly do this, that's what we've got going on there. So the idea is we can basically just have, okay, so if we put ammo boxes here because you don't want boxes from separate guns linking up to each other. So if this autoloader was slightly closer, it was here. What would happen is these two autoloaders would fight over this, and even if somehow you managed to get both of them linked up to it, with an explosive crate that would be great, because it would just fill the gun faster. However, the way ammo boxes work, never double them up, as what will happen is you will get more of a decrease to your reload time. So let's say I was to extend this out here, and I was to do this. If you were to have double ups like this going on, and you were to have like these this is all just one gun, so you could also have them doubling up here and so forth. Yeah, if you did that with ammo, what would happen is you would have the one ammo box worth of ammunition, because each ammo box actually adds ammunition to the gun. And what would happen is you would see here you've got 600 ammunition in 3 ammo boxes right now. If I was to rip the other ammo boxes out, now we've got 200 ammunition in one box. If we were to have more than one autoloader connected up to it, we're actually getting more than one ammo box worth of reduced cooldown time. So let's say we half the time in which we can fire the gun, so it's firing twice as often. It's still only got 200 ammunition. So the problem would be that you would be consuming that ammunition at a much faster rate because it's a set number of ammunition used for each shell. However, you're not going to be gaining any benefit, because what you're going to be doing is just running that ammunition supply completely dry in no time, and basically end up in a situation where the gun's complaining at you that it's got no internal ammo supplies. And the reason for this would be it would be waiting for the next tick of ammo. As soon as that happened, it would shoot again, and then it would wait. So you would actually end up cutting your reload time down eventually, just due to the fact that it would actually have to wait on ammo. So you're better off putting your explosives in places where they're doubling up, and so forth, and try to put your should whack those back in. Yeah, try to put your explosives, fragmentation, and hardness and so forth into places where they can double up, and yeah, you'll get more of an effect out of it. Unfortunately, that one there and that one there aren't really able to double up, but again, yeah, it's just because of the way the gun's set up to make sure that I'm using all the space effectively. So yeah, that's pretty much a run over the gun. It's fairly basically set up, but as you can see, there's a jigsaw to it a little bit. Oops, didn't mean to break that. Yes, there's a bit of a jigsaw to it. Majority of these will end up being explosives. It's just you got to find the points where it's sort of not doubling up and so forth, really. Like doubling up to a Cram connector and a Cram autoloader is fine, because the connector isn't trying to reduce your reload speed. Sorry, increase your reload speed, decrease your reload time. It's not doing anything funky like that, so it wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I hope that gives you a good idea of how the gun went together. It's all just basically about filling it in, making certain that any areas like this where, you know, the guns can kind of meet up, don't put like the ammo loaders there or anything. So this one will connect up to this ammo loader, and technically should be close enough to also connect up to that connector. So they should be connected up to the autoloaders, but that could explain why I have a slight difference now that I think about it. Taking more of a look. So hopefully none of those ammo boxes, for example, have connected up to the connectors rather than connecting up to the autoloaders that they're in line with. Or these ones, sorry. I hope that hasn't happened. But on the upside, anywhere where that has occurred, you can see I've used explosive pellets. This is connected to firing piece ID 2019. 2019. Okay, so they do appear. Well, that one's just not connected because I disconnected it. Oops. 1 second. 722. No, that one's connected up wrong now. and it's possible that changing things around like that could mess it up more. So I might have to work on my guns. But yeah, I don't know. Basically, they appear to work at the very least, so they definitely work. So I might just have to muck around with them a bit more. Try and make sure I get the gauge up to the right gauge and so forth. Try and get them into the ship. So really quickly before we end the episode, I might just show you the new current battleship. So I learned how to do a bunch of new things, and the lambs still need work because I don't know how some ships are doing it. Some enemy ships absolutely machine gun out their lambs, and I don't know how they're firing them so quickly, because mine fire relatively slow despite having 4 like Q switches from memory. Yeah, so this is the new battleship. So you can kind of see I've armored it up so that it actually covers up our turrets now. So the idea is if a shell is coming in to hit the turret head, it should hit this first, and then eventually once it's managed to bust enough of that away, it'll hit the turret head. The head of the turret should more often than not be larger than the actual base of the turret, and therefore should still protect it. These are fairly boxed in. This is cool, because these are surprising. Okay, why is that one not moving? I may need to double check my guns. Because that's strange, that should be moving. It should be set to the same group as the one next to it. Strange. You have to have a look over that. So, basically, yeah, whilst testing, I found that, I mean, here technically it should shoot the wall. Yeah, okay. Alright, well, whilst running the guns, I've actually never had it manage to do that. Yeah. But that would be the worst it would do. So, I mean, maybe I might need to tuck that in a bit more or something. But, yeah, other than that, I mean, they sort of sit right in here, and they are, like, it is ridiculous how much the barrels kind of poke into the armor with that, and yet just spray through. So, that's cool. But now I'm going to have to double check. Yes, see, these two are still moving perfectly. So that means I need to double check this. Hang on. Let me double check the spinner for this one. And if it's not the spinner, then something else is going on that's blocking this gun. So, sorry about this, guys. I just want to really quickly make sure. Yeah, that is set correctly. But it don't move. Okay, so I'm not sure what I've done wrong with that one, unless it's placed... Oh, it might be placed slightly off center. I might have actually... Oh, did I mess up maybe when I was placing that gun? Because it might be placed slightly off from where it's actually meant to sit. No, it looks right. It doesn't look like it's poking into any of the walls. Oh. No. No, this is right. I have no idea how this has occurred. Unless I put something in this room somehow by accident. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. Alright, so I learned how to do a bunch of new things. On the elevator again. So, yeah, the whole ship is still completely explorable. I also learned how to use PIDs, so they're going to be coming up in some of the new builds. They're not on this ship yet, but we'll get there. So we've got time to fuse frags set up to fire off in... I thought I set these up. No, I only set that one up. Okay, I've got to go through and basically just do that for all of them. So yeah, they're basically meant to be set up to fire in a 180 degree area, which means essentially it's just 360 degrees all around it. It's just going to be shrapnel. It's only 42 fragments, but the idea is lighter fighters and so forth, anything that this is missing by the slightest amount, it's going to go up with the time to fuse and it's just going to spray them down. This one, on the other hand, hollow point head, it's got bugger all damage. I mean, It's not too bad when it comes down to it. It's 501 kinetic damage. That is going to hit the enemy, like the surface of the enemy vehicle, so if it's a lighter surface, it's just going to blow a hole in it and then send the shrapnel inside. 60 fragments, 128 damage, it works out alright. Then up here is sort of where we've... Whoops, into the roof. There we go. It's sort of where we've got our high explosive warheads. These are going to be getting ripped out though. Okay. Over here we've got our electric engines still. So what's happened is this has been slightly changed. There's still an air gap. So I need to maybe figure out something to do with this space here, because I had to put the corridor in here before, so it kind of pulled this room in a bit and cut out some batteries, and yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll put some resources in there or something, I don't know. Still want to work that one out. So heading through this way, we should start seeing some new stuff. So up here we can now get all the way up and into the nose of the ship. We got some more repair bots down here tucked away. They're sort of stashed here and there throughout the ship now. We got more batteries hooked up over here. We got a whole bunch of ammo producers over here. We got a bunch more storage stacked up in here. We're holding a lot of materials now. 352,000 materials this thing can currently hold, and that's going to go up. There is good reason for that. We've got our lasers here. They're going to need work still. I want to try and figure out how the hell do I get them firing faster. That would be really useful. We got more ammo makers over here. So they're a little bit split up as well, so you know our ammo production can't just be completely cut off all of a sudden so that we just can't shoot anymore. Running all the way back down to the other end of the ship. There we go. We go this way, and then here we are. Alright. So, going down to this end of the ship, we have a slightly changed up room and a slightly changed up energy production system. So, currently what we've got going on is a pair of boilers. Now these boilers build up quite a bit of pressure. I've got two little tiny boilers in here, and I'll explain why in a sec. At this end here you can see they're generating a pretty decent amount of power. It builds up to like 6,500 I think it is or something. It's just huge. We're generating like 13,000 power per second. It's pretty good. Now on the other hand we've got the boilers here, these tiny little ones. They're burning 0 materials and generating 0 power. The reason for this is these pipe all the way back. I tried piping the main ones and it lowered the pressure so much that they just kind of turned to crap. So I was like, okay, I'll do it without it. But yeah, I've got little exhaust fumes on our steam. I thought, why not? Let's set up some exhaust pipes and let's flood steam out the back, so it looks like we got exhaust fumes going on. Yeah, so we got our propellers back here. We've got our little rudder back here. I actually was thinking of setting something up. I was going to extend this down another 2 more blocks, because we've got a lot of straightforward space. So there's these 2 rows here. Wait, whoops. There's these 2 rows here where we've got like 3 blocks of space, right? That's enough space for a dead blade spinner, essentially. We could basically, yeah, run those from one end to the other. All the way from the back, all the way down to the nose. And essentially all I need to do is just put a little hole at the front and the back so water could flood in through it. And what that would do is, hopefully we could go from our current speed of about 10 meters per second, hopefully get it to about 15 to 20. Really, I'd like to see this thing just powering through the water, so if it needs to catch something, it can. But yeah, that's something I'm looking at working towards. Yes, these are the guns I currently had on it, although I need to swap them over for the new ones with the fragmentation pellets. These are the ones that have, yeah, almost 60 armor piercing, 6,500 kinetic, secondary and tertiary volleys are all going to be like way lower in stats, of course, but they were doing enough damage from what I remember. Yeah, so we got these big arm things here on it. We got a couple machine guns. We got our rams still in here. We got torpedoes underneath. Had these in here for a little while now. And they're basically just running sonar buoys. They're not meant to hit hard or anything like that. I do need to set in a 1 turn. That's something that's kind of needed. Sort of forgot about when I first set them up, so that way they'll actually turn towards the enemy. But yeah, so they shoot out either side, and then they should turn towards the enemy, and they'll drag them off past like either end of the ship, hopefully. This is meant to be the idea. And yeah, I kind of sort of wanted to originally set them up so that they would sort of shoot. I wanted to set them up with boosters so they'd shoot to the left and the right. I should be able to do that once I extend the bottom down a bit more. And that way, yeah, these will boost out to the left, the other side will boost out to the right, and as we're sailing forward, we'll kind of have them shoot out the front at the right and left and sort of curve around and go towards the enemy, and any enemy torpedoes should curve out to the right to try and intercept them and sail past. Hopefully lose tracking, but if they don't outright lose tracking, they should continue past and pick up the ones that go out to the right and left from here and curve much further around. Because they're going out wider, they should send them out that way. Hopefully. Yeah, so that's pretty much a run over of the ship. They've got all our detection, all the rest of it up here. We've got little air gaps tucked all through the place. We've got lots of stuff going on. I don't think I can think of anything else that's necessarily changed just yet. I think these need cutting down a bunch in terms of the detection still. A bunch of stuff needs changing. Put wood on the outside, of course. Do the new sort of understanding of how armor works. I still can't believe I had that backwards. It's crazy. But yeah, fully explore the ship manually and look at everything it's got to offer. Except the electric engines, you can't really poke your head through the armor. But I mean, other than that, you can fully explore the ship, which is something I really quite like about this. You can get up and down between the different decks. Still using this, so you just ride the elevator up. Once you reach the top, jump out. You can run around to each of these. Oh yeah, one other thing that has changed now. These are no longer entrances and exits. You can only enter and exit through these doorways. They're marked out grey. I'm thinking of turning this whole upper deck grey though. And now you can actually go out here and you can explore and see the guns. So come in, have a gaze at them. You can even take manual control of those specific guns because you're sitting next to them and such. You just spray them around a bunch. Go through and visit all of them. You can even go and visit the main Cram cannons. I'm kind of thinking I might want to bring these beams forward as well to the end. I can't put any armor behind that because I had to actually bring those forward a block because they were hitting the corner. But yeah, I believe it's only 2 blocks of space I need on each side, so I should be able to bring this in one more by bringing those beams along. And then yeah, basically bunk it up other turrets. So yeah, that's it for now. Just so I give you guys an update on how the battleship's been getting along, and so show you guys the new gun, and yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and have a good one, guys.